Now, here's Michael Smerconish.
Michael Isikoff has done it again. Another blockbuster story. This for Yahoo News, written with two of his colleagues, Zach Dorfman and Sean Naylor. Michael's the chief investigative correspondent for Yahoo News, where he's also the editor-at-large for reporting and investigations, digs into national security matters and money in politics. He, of course, previously was with NBC and Newsweek and has written a couple of bestsellers. I told him before we begin the segment that this is Jason Bourne-like stuff and that I would love to have a piece of the action for the screenwrite. Listen to the way this piece begins, and it's a very exhaustive deep dive that's now in my social media. In 2017, as Julian Assange began his fifth-year holdup in Ecuador's embassy in London, the CIA plotted to kidnap the WikiLeaks founder, spurring heated debate among Trump administration officials over the legality and practicality of such an operation. Some senior officials inside the CIA and the Trump administration even discussed killing Assange, going so far as to request quote unquote sketches or options for how to assassinate him. Discussions over kidnapping or killing Assange occurred at the highest level of the Trump administration. This is Michael Isikoff. Michael, thank you so much for coming back to the program.
Hey, great to be with you.
I mean, it's fantastical stuff. I guess the story begins with Vault 7. What is Vault 7?
Vault 7 was the name for the CIA's most sensitive hacking tools. The CIA had exploits to use to penetrate computer networks, iPhones, other devices around the world. And this was something the CIA used and viewed as one of its most aggressive and, powerful weapons in the world of cyber warfare. And WikiLeaks began publishing some of this material that apparently had been hacked or provided to it. And Mike Pompeo, who was then the CIA director, just went ballistic about this. There had been concerns about WikiLeaks within the U.S. intelligence community for years, its ties to Russia. Of course, we had the experiences of the 2016 election when WikiLeaks is publishing all this, the material, the DNC emails and Podesta emails that had been purloined by Russian intelligence. But that all happened under Obama. When a Pompeo gets in and it's his agency that has been subjected to this, and it's his agency that's been exposed, he was, number one, embarrassed by it. As we report, he was reluctant to even brief President Trump on what had taken place and was instructed, no, this is too significant, you have to. And then sort of ordered up all sorts of aggressive plans to dismantle WikiLeaks. And it included, as we report, proposals to kidnap him, a snatch operation. There was talk of assassination, although we want to be clear, that never went up to the White House. That was never approved. But there were all sorts of other aggressive means, including spying on Assange and his associates. The CIA was getting live audio and video feeds from inside the Ecuadorian embassy, monitoring the communications of WikiLeaks associates and stealing their devices and computers. There were a lot of aggressive actions that the CIA wanted to conduct, and this raised all sorts of alarm bells within the National Security Council and especially among lawyers inside the White House.
My God, there is so much there to unpack. And don't worry, we're not giving it away for free. I want people to actually read everything that is, it's like a novella of sorts. But as I hear your explanation about Vault 7, the concern, I guess, was that our adversaries would now know our capabilities, the capability of both the CIA as well as other intelligence arms like the NSA. They'd now know what we're able to do.
Exactly. And that's why this was viewed within the CIA as the largest single data loss in CIA history. And it did expose some of these sensitive hacking tools that the CIA relied on. So it was a huge deal for the agency. And as we report, Pompeo and Gina Haspel, his deputy at the time, were seeing blood.
Michael, I can remember being in London. I can remember being in London as a tourist not that long ago, pre-pandemic, obviously. And with one of my sons, after we left, the Harrods food court, we walked around the back of the building because I wanted to see the Ecuadorian embassy because it was made so famous by Assange. There was a small balcony and he would sometimes come out and speak to the media. Your reporting, as you just referenced, reveals that we were able to monitor what he was doing inside that embassy.
Exactly. There was testimony in a Spanish court case about a company called UC Global that had been hired by the Ecuadorians to provide security at the embassy. And the testimony in the Spanish court case, which included affidavits and declarations from a couple of employees, was that the UC Global had been turned by the CIA, and the CIA was using this security firm to spy and conduct surveillance on Assange. And from Assange's lawyer's point of view, this is extremely serious because, there were communications with his lawyers, with his doctors, all sorts of, personal privacy information and confidential information that, presumably the CIA should not have had access to, but apparently they did. Let me
Another
just
large part of
yeah,
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No. I think you're going to get to that. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say another large part of the story that you've broken at Yahoo News relates to the fact that Putin already had a big victory in now having Edward Snowden in his midst and desperately wanted to have Assange as well. And the concern that you explain is that this would be a huge victory if that were to happen. And we were prepared to go to any lengths, including having conversations with the Brits as to who would do the firing against Russians if there were on the streets of London, to be this effort for them to try and extricate Assange to go to Putin.
This is probably the single wildest part of a very wild story, but in the CIA's plans for abduction and doing other surveillance and other aggressive measures against WikiLeaks, all was in the spring and summer of 2017. But later that year, the U.S. intelligence community gets reports it viewed as credible that Assange was planning to escape from the Ecuadorian embassy with Russian assistance, and that there were Russian operatives on the ground who were prepared to help him spirit away out of the embassy, take him to an airport, and fly him to Moscow. And that raises all sorts of alarm bells at the highest levels of the Trump administration and inside the White House. And there were all sorts of extremely aggressive measures, plans to thwart any such Russian operation. Intelligence undercover operatives were placed all around the Ecuadorian embassy. One very senior official is quoted in the piece saying it was as though within a 3-block radius, everybody present was working for one intelligence service or another, whether it be the Brits, the CIA, the Russians, who knows who else. And as part of the plans, there was concern that there could be a shootout if Assange was seen leaving the embassy, that if the Russians took him to this airport, the CIA was prepared with snipers to shoot out the tires of the plane so it couldn't take off. There were helicopters positioned that would prevent the plane from taking off as well. There was all sorts of wild stuff, so much so that it was actually briefed to the president himself.
Quote, if the Russians managed to get Assange onto a plane, U.S. or British operatives would prevent it from taking off by blocking it with a car on the runway, hovering a helicopter over it, or shooting out its tires, according to a former senior Trump administration official. In the unlikely event that the Russians succeeded in getting airborne, officials plan to ask European countries to deny the plane overflight rights, the former official said. How much of that, those extreme measures contemplated, were to deny Putin the PR win? In other words, was it all about perception, or was it that if Assange got to Putin, there would also be a treasure trove of information that he would give him upon arrival?
I think it's a mixture. I think, look, at this point, the CIA, Pompeo, remember, has declared WikiLeaks a hostile, non-state hostile intelligence service, which he publicly said in April of 2017 in a talk in a Washington think tank. I was there. I, like a lot of people, assumed this was just kind of some grabby talking point that Pompeo used, clickbait that would get some attention, get some headlines. In fact, this was a formal designation that opened the door for the CIA to do all sorts of these, what it views as offensive counterintelligence activities that, if it's aimed at a hostile intelligence service, doesn't need a presidential finding and doesn't need to be briefed to Capitol Hill, to the intelligence committees. So that was the door. So they viewed Assange at this point as an enemy, somebody who was working with enemies of the United States to embarrass, humiliate, and undercut the national security of the United States. So they did not want Assange out for that reason alone. Also, remember, the Justice Department, at White House urging, because of all this concern within the CIA, the White House is urging the Justice Department to hurry up and indict Assange, which they do in late 2017. And at that point, once he's indicted, he becomes a fugitive from justice. If he's not within the US court system, he's, of course, still in Britain. There's still an extradition process. But if he had gone to Moscow, there'd be no way of getting him back. Exhibit A, Edward Snowden.
Michael, most of your reporting talks from the perspective of Pompeo. What about Trump?
Yeah, Trump is interesting because we all remember from 2016, I love WikiLeaks, right? They're publishing these emails that are embarrassing to Hillary Clinton, that are helping the Trump campaign, all of them, of course, purloined by Russian intelligence. Pompeo was, clearly, whatever concerns he may or may not have had about Assange's help with the Russians. And by the way, I was at the Aspen Security Conference in 2017. Pompeo spoke and kind of dismissed the whole, Russian interference in the election to help Trump. That was not, he said, the Russians do this every time, no big deal here. But once the Vault 7 thing happens, that's on his watch. That's his agency, and his attitudes towards WikiLeaks take a very drastic change.
And finally, remind us all, where is Assange today, and what is the status of his legal situation?
Assange is in a prison in the United Kingdom. This extradition process is moving forward. There's a hearing October 27th and 28th, I believe. And this is, remember, the British judge in the extradition case denied the U.S. Justice Department's request to extradite Assange, saying that he was at a risk of possible suicide if he were ended up in a U.S. prison. So his lawyers, needless to say, are reading our story very closely and do plan to raise this in some fashion, hoping to use the information we've published to block his extradition. We'll see whether that works. But one point that is worth making is, although Assange was indicted under the Trump administration, it is the Merrick Garland Biden Justice Department that is pursuing the extradition case.
I don't know if this is apples to apples, and I promise I'll let you go in a moment. I just want to share this observation. As I was reading Michael Isikoff's report for Yahoo News, this stunning story about the lengths to which we contemplated going to get Julian Assange, I kept thinking of those who were at Guantanamo, who were subjected to rendition and or harsh interrogation methods. And I believe that's why there haven't been trials, because if there were to be a trial, that sort of thing is going to be used by defense lawyers to try and exonerate their clients. And I'm wondering if not only will this play a role in extradition with the British judge that you just referenced, but if Assange were to get back to the United States and be tried, I wonder if some of your revelations will be to his benefit in that legal context.
Certainly they could. I mean, defense lawyers are going to raise everything that they can. One of them is quoted in the piece saying he's outraged by what we're disclosing and thinks it absolutely should be brought to the attention of the British courts. But certainly if he goes to a U.S. court, the same thing holds. In fact, the analogy that was cited to me from one of his defense lawyers was Daniel Ellsberg, who was put on trial for publishing the Pentagon Papers, but government misconduct was grounds for throwing out the charges against him. And I think it's likely to see a similar effort by Assange's lawyers. You had asked me about Trump and I lost my train of thought there. I just wanted to make the point that Trump, we all remember him saying, "I love WikiLeaks," yet then he's got his CIA director demanding all these aggressive actions. He does ask, as we reported one source saying that he had been briefed on a meeting in which Trump did ask about assassinating Assange. But in his quote that he gave us for this piece, in which he denied ever asking about Assange's assassination, but then says, Assange has been treated very unfairly. That's Trump's quote. So he's reverted to the "I love WikiLeaks" position he had originally taken in 2016, because that's what he remembers most of all. This guy helped me, he's on my side, let's help him.
Michael, 2 words: movie rights. Okay. It's unbelievable. It's a remarkable story. Congratulations for getting it and writing it. And thank you again for your willingness to discuss it with my audience. I really appreciate it.
Sure, anytime. And I just want to remind people this was a joint effort with my colleagues, Zach Dorfman and Sean Naylor.
No doubt. Thank you for that.
Credit.
That's Michael.
Thank you.
That's Michael Isikoff. Michael is the chief investigative correspondent for Yahoo News. Right now in my social media, please read the story that we were just referencing. It is a stunning, stunning read.